Hi guys. So the main stories of this week were the Conservative Party conference and Miliband versus the Mail. I'm going to focus mainly on the Conservative Party conference because I actually was able to attend that. The party conference wasn't what I expected at all. Being my first time going without any friends, going on my own, I wasn't really sure what to expect. I knew there was listening to speeches, I knew there was going to be events, but I really didn't know what to expect. But I gotta say, it was a really good environment. It was relaxed, it was informal, yet very much, as you would expect, politically based or policy based as well. But the people I spoke to, especially the ministers, the chairman of the party, the people on the board that actually make decisions, they really wanted to hear your views. And especially in the party members only session, I found it really encouraging that they wanted you to speak up, they wanted you to share your views, um, and hopefully they'll take those views on board because, especially what the other delegates were saying, was things that the grassroots were either worried about or maybe they didn't understand a policy announcement that we've made in the past. So it's all about improving how we can engage with the public more. The conference officially started halfway through on Sunday, and one of the highlights of the openings was the Our Maggie film. Now, if you look at my blog, there is a link to that, so please do watch it. Even if you have a opinion already of who Margaret Thatcher was, it's still worth watching. To me, I obviously didn't live through the years of when Margaret Thatcher was Prime Minister, but that video in particular really did highlight the values and the morals that she stood by, how she basically ran this country and how she put, as the saying goes, great back into Great Britain. I've read many history books and many autobiographies and biographies of various prime ministers from the past, and the one thing that actually really comes out when we talk about Margaret Thatcher is that she always put the country first. It was never her own ambition, and to me that's quite inspirational. That's quite amazing actually for a prime minister to put the country first. Look at the last, say, 3, 4 prime ministers we've had. How many of them actually did that apart from Margaret Thatcher? How many of them went against all odds and said, you know what, but the country needs this? So yeah, that was the best kind of bit for me for the opening. I'm not going to go through every speech, but I will highlight from each day the best speeches or the ones that I thought quite nice, and why I thought they were nice. So day one continued with William Hague talking about foreign affairs, and the best quote I guess I can give is he said, "Promising words needs to be matched with genuine action." Now, he was talking mainly about Syria in that point, but for me, I think that's a wider issue. No matter what we do, what we say, either as Conservatives, as Liberal Democrats, as Labour, as a government, we need to make sure whatever we say, we actually back up with action. So I quite like that, and I quite like the rest of the speech as well. Day two continued, roughly the same format, so we had a few speeches, a few party members only sessions, then of course fringe events throughout the whole day. I'm going to be honest, I didn't attend a lot of fringe events. I quite liked sitting in the speeches and going to the party members only sessions. But on day two we had Theresa May speaking about basically the Home Office, and I really liked her speech. I'm very patriotic. Whenever anyone asks me whether I'm British or I'm Indian or what my ethnicity is, I'm always British. You look at cricket, England versus India, I'm always there for England. Same with football, same with any sport, to be honest. I'm very patriotic. So when Theresa May said, whatever the religion, race and beliefs of the terrorists, whatever the race, religion and beliefs of the victims, this is Britain. We are all British. We stand united against terrorism and we will never succumb to violence. That was the best line, I guess, for her speech. Her speech was very patriotic, very British orientated, and I really like that, and I think we need to be putting that back into our community. and we need to be putting that back into basically our lives. If you go to America, you go to Canada, they are very patriotic with their stars and stripes, their flag, and in this country I very rarely see it, to be honest. And I think we should be patriotic to the flag, to the Queen, and to the throne. But that's another issue. The next speech was, this wasn't one of the main speeches, but Damian Green stood up and he spoke a lot about grooming. Now, to me as a Sikh, and especially in my community, so I guess the Indian Asian community, the Sikh and the Hindus kind of community, it's a very big issue, grooming, especially when you go up north, because a lot of girls, and it is mainly girls, coming out from, say, the life of sixth form school and going into college or university, they get targeted a lot for not only grooming individually but organized grooming, which means gangs of people will, or gangs of boys will give them presents, give them drugs, drinks, and then it'll go, say, 6 months, a year. They'll literally get these girls wrapped around their fingers and promise them the world, but then within a split second ruin their lives. And I really like Damian Green's speech on how that the statistics have been hidden for too long and how nothing has been done, but the party is actually setting up a agency and organisation which will be working with the NHS, social workers and the police in a collective force to try and tackle this issue. It's not going to be easy, I'm not expecting miracles, but I really did like the fact that they've realised it's an issue and they're going to try and do something about it. Day 3 comes and Eric Pickles talks about local communities. I really like what Eric Pickles says, because I know when I go to the high street, exactly what he says happens. So he talked about going to the high street and you can never find somewhere to park because there's either too many yellow lines, or you maybe stay 1 or 2 minutes over your 20 minutes or your 2-hour period of time that you're allowed to stay, and you get a ticket. Now, Eric Pickles is going to challenge, or this is what he says, going to challenge councils to say actually it should be easy for someone on the way home from work or on the way somewhere to just pop into their local high street and pick up a pint of milk or pick up a loaf of bread. There shouldn't be any of these spy cameras, there shouldn't be so many yellow lines that people can't just pull up and go into the local shops. So that practically was really good, actually. I think that will make a lot of difference to people's lives. So I hope that does go through, or something happens with that one. On day 3 again in the afternoon, we had the education and the health session. Now, the education side of this one was absolutely amazing, totally inspiring and totally uplifting. Having worked in a school, I know the challenges children face, especially from low-income families and low-income backgrounds. And when Lindsay John, who's was invited by Michael Gove, stood up and said, if we raise the bar for our children, then our children will raise their game to meet it, I was actually really inspired, and I totally agree with that. If we say, well, you're from a low-income family, or you're black, you're coloured, you don't have the support at home, so we're not going to teach you, say, Shakespeare or algebra, we're going to teach you something different instead, or take you on an alternative route. But these kids should have the chance to try, and if they can't, or if they don't have that support at home, they should be given that support. And it leads me on to the next person who Gove invited, was Mark Lehane, who's a head teacher at one of the first free schools actually built. And he was talking about how every teacher should have the freedom to lift that child up when they need to be lifted and push them harder. But also the freedom and the flexibility to teach the way they want to teach in a classroom, so it inspires the children to actually engage in their learning. Now, without Michael Gove even saying a word, that whole session was really inspiring, especially with those 2 speakers. And I know one of them is online, and there's a link on my blog. I would totally recommend watching it. Now, the last day was the Prime Minister's speech, and with any leader speech, sometimes they play it safe, sometimes they don't. But I think the main message, or there's two messages actually that came out of the Prime Minister's speech, was in 3 years, how much have we achieved? And he rattled off a list, and it was quite impressive actually. So the amount of things that we've achieved. Do look on my blog for more details on what we have achieved. But the main purpose of that speech, or what I thought of that speech, was his phrasing of this is the land of opportunity. Britain should be that land of opportunity. And I would agree. I'm the first generation in my family to go to university. And if it wasn't for the opportunity of basically going to a good school with my parents behind me pushing me all the way, there's no way I would get to where I am now. And something the Prime Minister said which was really good was we should be giving people the ladder to climb so that they can climb it by their own effort. And I agree, we need to stop giving people, for example, welfare or benefits all the time without actually encouraging them and saying, well, actually, if you go out to work, you can also achieve X, Y, and Z. If you go and help the community, you can also achieve X, Y, and Z. If you take one step forward, then actually, in a year's time, you'll be 3 rungs up that ladder and you'll have a better life, not only for yourself, but your family. So, definitely, I think the land of opportunity, we still got a long way to go, but that's a good vision to have. Now going on to the second story of the week, or the second main story of the week, was Mail versus the Miliband, or Miliband versus the Mail. The Daily Mail comes out with that Ed Miliband's father was the man who hated Britain, and it's a pretty nasty article. I read it after the conference. Ed Miliband rightly did a right to reply. So he replied to the article which was published, but then sneakily, and I guess tabloids or newspapers are allowed to do this, they republished the first article with the man who really hated Britain. It's a fine line between whether they should have published it or should not have published it, and I understand both sides. For me personally, it just shows the integrity of the paper, of Daily Mail, and why attack someone's personality, someone's father who's now passed away? I don't understand the sense in that. But unfortunately, until we get some kind of press regulation or some kind of charter which holds the press to account on either slandering or smearing or what we had in the past, phone hacking, I think unfortunately this kind of stuff or this kind of behaviour is going to continue. If I was in charge of the Daily Mail, I wouldn't have written anything along those lines, and I think personally they probably should apologise. But at the end of the day, I still firmly believe we need some kind of regulation, just like politicians are held to account for their expenses of what they do, how they represent their constituents. I think the Daily Mail or tabloids, newspapers, news broadcasters in general should be held to account on how they portray the news and what their audience, at the end of the day, think about it. That's it for this week. Do read my blog for more detailed analysis, and I hope to see you again next week.